we are all creative. Creativity is for everyone. We all have an obstacle. Maybe it's something that can help inform you and give you the courage to do other things. That is really what being vulnerable and being authentic does. It opens up the conversation, because otherwise, what's the point?
Educate, inform, inspire. The Dan Parsons Show, a podcast that lifts up instead of tearing down.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Dan Parsons Show. I'm your host, Dan Parsons. Well, it's finally Friday, and that means we get to catch up with my best bud, Chef Kevin, and our very special guest, editorial cartoonist Jeff Koterba, whose work is syndicated nationwide to over 850 newspapers. But before we launch the Friday Afternoon Club, a serious note. Check out our YouTube episode on the latest developments on legalizing medical cannabis in the Nebraska legislature. As you may know, voters overwhelmingly approved a ballot issue to legalize medical marijuana here in Nebraska just last year. Now, the Nebraska Attorney General is trying to circumvent the will of the people. It's just outrageous. Check it out and leave a comment on our YouTube page. I'd really appreciate it. All right, here's the Friday Afternoon Club with Chef Kevin and our special guest, Jeff Koterba. Enjoy. Well, another week of politics and current events is in the can. By the way, if you're not viewing us on YouTube, we're blowing up over on the YouTube. My producers told us we had over 26,000 views in April. So anyway, we had an election for city council and school board and airport authority here in Lincoln this week. Omaha's city elections are next week. So by the time we get through all that BS, it's time to relax a little bit. And we do that every other Friday with my best bud, Chef Kevin Shin, for the Friday Afternoon Club. Chef, happy Friday.
How you getting on, Dano?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Well, anyway, we'll put that in the post notes of why there's an Irish accent in Kevin's hello. So anyway, but yeah, Friday Afternoon Club, perfect way to take a break from all that and do something different. Look forward to the weekend. And we always invite someone to join us on the Friday Afternoon Club. It's my joy to introduce our guest, Jeff Koterba. Jeff, welcome to the inaugural visit to the Dan Parsons Show.
Dan, thank you so much. Chef, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chef, we've got a celebrity when we have a guest that has a Wikipedia page. I don't have one. Do you have a Wikipedia page yet?
Yeah, that he didn't make, probably.
I didn't know. I have nothing. I truly don't have anything to do with it, for better and for worse.
Well, let me read from it. Jeff, I won't say when you were born, Jeff, but you're 5 months older than me. He's an American editorial cartoonist based in Omaha, Nebraska. He was the editorial cartoonist for the Omaha World Herald from 1989 until September of 2020. I love this quote, Jeff, on your Wikipedia page. I was born in Omaha, Nebraska, and in the summer before my senior year of high school, I was struck by lightning, and my mom wanted to take me to the hospital. Instead, my dad gave me Jack Daniels.
True story.
Soon after, Jeff's cartoons began showing up in the Omaha World Herald. His work appears in over 850 publications around the globe. And yes, around the globe, literally. We'll talk about that. They've flown in space and exhibited all over the world. Jeff, as I told you recently when we met for the very first time, I've been a big fan. So I appreciate you coming on and chatting with our audience.
I appreciate it. I'm a fan of yours, and it's crazy that we only met in person recently, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, never too late. Yeah. And a shout out to our friends at Flatwater Free Press. Mm-hmm. We met at their opening of their new office, and that was Jeff. I've geeked out over this because it was kind of the all-star lineup of journalists from Nebraska at that open house with Flatwater, including you and so many other people from a lot of former World Herald folks. So anyway, I've geeked out on and I guess I kind of am a journalist now. I studied journalism, but I've spent my life trying to get people noticed or unnoticed, as a need may be. But so anyway,
and it's hopeful. It's hopeful, and I don't know. Like it was just a joy to be in that space, a beautiful space, but to be around other people who believe in the importance of journalism, and not just the other journalists, but supporters. And it was a real uplifter for me. I haven't been locally in any kind of event like that in a number of years where journalism was being supported. So it was great.
Yeah, it is. All right, Chef, what are we drinking?
All right. Well, since Jeff's creator brought some of my homebrew along.
Oh, nice.
I created.
Boom. I didn't know any was left. You still?
Yeah. I in the late 90s, early 2000s, I delved into homebrewing, and it was okay. It's homebrew, but I never really, thought much of it. But I had not brewed in probably 20 years. So last fall, I thought I'm going to do that. I still have all the equipment, still got all these Grolsch bottles that.
Oh yeah, I recognize those.
Yeah, that make great homebrew bottles.
You need a label with a cartoon on it.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll chat. Yeah.
Let's get that.
I'm kind of a Pilsner. I want to hear about your beer because
So I made a big batch of beer and let it age. And this spring I opened it up. I'm like, wow, this I think it's good. And so I thought I'm going to serve it to my guests in the portico, and I made it available. And the other night, one guy he drank 5 of them.
Ooh.
So I thought that's
kind
a
of
good
depleted
confidence.
Yeah.
For someone to want 5 of your home brews back to back. So here, cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers.
My Citra Pale Ale.
We got to talk to our producers about shipping some of your drink of the week to me and our guest every week.
I'd like to say I'm drinking gin, but it's merely water at this point. But
it's in the right glass to.
It is. That's psychologically. I tell myself I'm drinking gin. But
yeah. Okay, where do we start? Oh, I know where we're going to start. Jeff,
it's so NA. There's not even a flavor in it. I digress.
That might even adjust the A.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Flavor in it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's 0.00001 A.
Jeff, our producers have come up with 4 questions that I ask all of our first-time guests.
Yeah.
To get to know you a little bit better. And so if you're ready, we call it Dan's 4 and you're 1. Okay. I ask you 4, and then you get to fire one back at me. It can be similar to what I've asked you or something completely off the wall. So, all right. And it's always a little intimidating with this, Chef, when I have a journalist on and I'm the one that's asking questions. So anyway, we'll see how this goes. So question number 1, Jeff, where did you grow up?
I'm a South O kid, South Omaha, SOB, as we say in South Omaha boy. And you alluded to the lightning strike earlier. That's where that happened in South Omaha. So yes, South O kid, grew up in a very, very, very small house. My dad had been a professional drummer and also a TV repairman, and oldest of 5, 1 bathroom, 5 kids.
Wow.
Broken TVs everywhere and drums everywhere. That was my growing up in South Omaha.
Awesome. Oh, wow. We could do a whole episode just on that. Okay. Question number 2. What was your dream job when you were a kid?
Don't have to think about it. Cartoonist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, in the middle of all of that chaos, the thing that really kind of saved me was blank sheets of paper. So I would go off into the corner with this blank sheet of paper that I would fill up with drawings.
Yeah. Very cool. And the answer to this next question, Jeff, because I've obviously got a lot of politicians on the show and people who have met a lot of famous people, and I suspect you fall into that category too. So answer this question any way you like. The most famous person you've ever met?
I've met a few and have some good stories, I think, but I have to say, without a doubt, Neil Armstrong, first guy on the moon.
Wow.
So,
wow. I guess. Tell us, how did that come about?
Well, Nebraska-born astronaut Clay Anderson
Yeah.
it started because I drew a cartoon about him when I was still at the World Herald. This is years ago. And my friend Liz Haruska had the cartoon beamed to the space station. I wasn't aware of that. Clay emailed me from the space station. We became friends. And then when he went back in space on Space Shuttle Discovery, he asked me to come to the launch and to draw a couple of cartoons, as you alluded to take on board the space shuttle. And so we're waiting there for the launch in the Saturn V complex, if you've been there at the Kennedy Space Center. And, it's a Saturn V rocket end to end, like a giant skyscraper. And there is Neil Armstrong standing beneath this rocket.
Wow.
And I don't normally get starstruck, no pun intended, but I knew I had to talk to him. And I also knew, as I am nervously walking up to him, that I literally have nothing I can say to him that he's never heard before. And I proved that to be true, but I stumbled through it, but it was cool to meet him.
That's a cool story. Yeah, that ranks right up there. Okay, last question for you in these get to know you questions. What was the very first concert you attended?
The Grateful Dead. I was age 13.
Oh, wow.
My hippie uncle Lyle somehow convinced my parents to let me go on a Sunday night. I was, eighth grade, I think, seventh grade, maybe, whatever it was, parochial school. Went out on a Sunday night to a Dead concert when there was back when they had, was it Fillmore style seating or whatever? It was the old Omaha Civic Auditorium were crushed trying to wait. They were so late opening the doors. And then from then on, it was, it was crazy. I didn't partake in anything, but I can tell you that everyone else in that entire place did. So secondhand, a lot of it was crazy. I just remember it as being one long 4-hour concert. At one point, the bassist, I think, left the stage, was gone for about an hour and a half, and I don't think anybody noticed. And then somebody blew off an M80 next to me. Oh, so that was my first experience.
Well, might as well just jump into a Dead concert. That's yeah. Well, and so the rest of that's all you have one for me. I'm sorry. So you're one back. Dan, I was getting ready to go off on another tangent.
No.
About your one question for me.
So you've been doing this. You've been doing the podcast now for coming up on a year or so.
Close to it. Yeah. Yep. This summer.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm wondering, for you as a person or as a journalist, however you want to answer this, how has doing this podcast changed you?
Yeah. Well, I alluded to it earlier, or maybe I mentioned it earlier. I've spent my career, literally my whole career, 30 years of getting people noticed. That's what I've done for my whole career for United States senators and governors and attorney generals and, people in electric chairs and death penalty, and all these incredible opportunities I've had to be behind the scenes and write other people's words and navigate and work with journalists and reporters and editors to get these stories out in a way that's beneficial to the people that are paying my wages. And so making this and so I've built those relationships with people like you that I've known for 30 years and so I've built these relationships. So now I find myself on the other end of that. And so it's really been, and I've never, and you both, and we're going to get into this, you and Kevin both have done a lot of public speaking, and you've done really, really well, and some incredible opportunities you've had. And I've never considered myself a public speaker. I barely put 3 sentences together to introduce this podcast in a coherent way. And so I think that change has been, and it's still kind of happening, of considering myself a journalist. I was invited. I've had Congressman Bacon on, Congressman Flood here in the last few months as they have been in the news. And Congressman Bacon, actually, his staff started inviting me as a podcaster to their news conferences. So anyway, that's been a little weird to get used to answer your question, Jeff. So I'm still getting used to it, but I'm kind of liking it.
It's great to do new things and
Yeah.
change it up, you know. And I'm scared of a lot of things. I'm an introvert, and one of my techniques, I I jump in, you know, and just go into the fear, and hopefully come out of the other side sort of okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's dive into this. In getting ready for this podcast today, I knew this when I decided to put the two of you together, but I didn't know the extent of it, and that is just how much you and Kevin have in common, and some of the things that you've done. And one of those things is public speaking. You've both spoke at TEDx and other obviously events. But the theme of both of your appearances that I've paid attention to and wanted to talk a little bit about is vulnerability. And Kevin has been very vulnerable and transparent about his situation, his travel with losing his wife, and struggling in business and rebuilding his brand, and the anger that has come with that. And he's spoken about that. And of course, you're well known about speaking about Tourette syndrome and being very vulnerable to an audience and talking about that lifelong condition that you've had. So anyway, Kevin, maybe start us off with what that's been like, and you're both public people in your own right. Kevin being a well-known chef here in Lincoln, and obviously Jeff, your experience with the World Herald, and so you're both, to start with, pretty public people, and then you walk onto a stage and you just let it all hang out. And so Kevin, start us off. What's that been like?
I think I first remember that sense of needing to be vulnerable, or the invitation, I would say, to be vulnerable, was when my wife was first diagnosed with cancer in 2010. I'm sitting in the consultation room. The surgeon had just left the room. He told me the bad news, and I'm just sitting there like, okay, now how do I get my hands around this, my head around this? It was going to be a few hours in recovery before I would even be able to come in and see her. And the first impulse, that's what I would call it, is an impulse, was to go home and write. And I thought, is that weird? Like, I didn't want to call a friend. I didn't want to go get coffee and chat with anybody. I wanted to go home and write. And I did. And all the while staying curious. Why is that my first response? And I think what I came to realize was writing was one of the ways that I process major matters like grief and anger and sorrow. And so I needed to immediately started to put it down on paper. And Jeff, you talk about putting pictures down on paper. I had to put words down on paper and take a blank sheet and fill it up. And I just learned in the way I deal with stuff, that was very, very cathartic for me. And then as the cancer process continued, I started writing her story on my blog, because we were public people. We had a public restaurant, and people knew our story, we didn't know theirs. But I found that putting her story out there in front of us gave people permission to ask about it, and they didn't have to feel awkward about it. And so we gave you the permission to go ahead and ask by writing. And I think that was probably the first thing that made sense to me, because people said, man, how do you do that? My God, that's very personal. And well, yeah, I needed to do it, though. That it's kind of a weird, some people feel like, no, don't know me. I felt like I had to open up in order to get it out and not be wrecked by it.
Jeff, was that a similar experience for you? By the way, we're going to, I think, link your TEDx talk and Kevin, maybe some of your most recent talk on fear that you did just last week or week before here in Lincoln. So Jeff, you've been very public about the Tourette syndrome and just a beautiful telling of that story and how as a kid, as you alluded to, in a very maybe non-traditional household of maybe it was traditional back where you grew up and everything, but I think looking at back now maybe and how early on you decided that that drawing was going to be a way for you to express yourself. So anyway, talk a little bit about your vulnerability and talking to the public.
Yeah, and to sort of play off what you were saying, Kevin, I love what you said that your writing about that sort of opened up the conversation for others, gave them permission to talk to you. And I love that. And I guess I hadn't really quite thought of it that way before, but that is really what being vulnerable and being authentic does. It opens up the conversation because otherwise, what's the point? What's the point of any of it, of being a human being, if we can't have I cannot stand going to a cocktail party and just having
Small
blah,
talk.
blah, blah. Oh my God. Let's have a real conversation. Like, and even if I'm just at the checkout count or whatever, getting groceries, whatever, or getting coffee. Yes, I understand exchanging pleasantries. How are you? Good day. I get all that. Sure. But let's ask real questions. It doesn't have to be anything deep, but something that gets people, you know what I mean, to think, like I was at a coffee shop a while back and somebody said, just ask me, what's the best coffee you've ever had? Whoa. And it allowed me to think back to somewhere that I'd gone and had a great coffee. But to your point, regarding the vulnerability thing, I again, introvert, scared of a lot of things, quiet, couldn't even look people in the eye and having a conversation. I was just that afraid for all the reasons. And maybe some of it was the Tourette's. I'm keeping it in now. My brain is constantly telling me that I must twitch. Mm. And if I think about it and allow myself to do it, I'll start doing it right now. So it's exhausting. Mm. But the other thing is, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't have to be Tourette's. Mm-hmm. We all have an obstacle. We all have a challenge. We all have pain. We all have crap that we've been through, whether that's a neurological thing, whether it's some thing that's happened to you. And I understand for some people that you do put it away in a box. And if that's dealing with it, and that's awesome. Mm-hmm. But for me, I do want to encourage others, if you have some kind of obstacle, some challenge, to move into it. And maybe it's, to overuse this phrase, superpower, maybe it's something that can help inform you and give you the courage to do other things and to help others and to be creative. Like I find my creative power in that and other things as well.
Jeff, I listened to your TED Talk, and you said you were not diagnosed with Tourette's early on. Is that correct? And
it wasn't until my later 20s.
Okay. How did it change when you named it, or when it was named?
Yeah, that's a great question.
You went 20 plus years.
Yeah.
This thing doesn't have a name.
Yeah.
Now it has a name. Did that change anything for you?
It did, for better and for worse. On the one hand, growing up, it's genetic. My dad had it. I have others in my family that have it. Not everyone has it, but growing up, we had what my dad called nervous habits, and I couldn't control them. I didn't understand it enough, and I was frustrating because I wished I could have somehow known that. Mm-hmm. So I think in that regard, it would have maybe been helpful to say, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with me. It's this." Well, it's this thing, whatever. On the other hand, I worry sometimes that at least for me, I was careful to not identify as, now I'm a Tourette's person. Some people do. And if that's your way of dealing with it, I totally, totally understand it. But I'm more than that. It's a part of me, but it doesn't identify me. It doesn't, the Jeff Koterba definition doesn't start and stop there, if that makes any sense. So yeah, so it's a contextual thing, and it was really helpful for context.
Mm.
But I also thought it was important to understand it more, and to understand that that's why my brain works this way.
Mm.
Again, for context. So kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
I'm glad I know I have it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have this strange sleep disorder. I have several, but it shows up randomly. I've done 3 sleep studies. It's never shown up during that. And I think I've always wanted it to show up so that I can know, what is this? What is this? But I think what I've learned to, I don't know, accept, embrace, carry on with is, it just is. And I'll keep dealing with it as it comes, but not focus on it and let it dominate.
Have you done the sleep study, the one that you can do at home now? Because I've done several, and in the past I had to do them at a sleep center, and I found it ironic that they had the worst pillows I've ever had in my life.
And the worst mattresses, and
why?
It feels like, you're in a hospital room, and we're supposed to sleep. Yeah, I felt behind the 8 ball right away.
But they have a home method now.
Okay, I'll look.
So you get the kit, you take it home, whatever.
Yeah, you got 55 electrodes hooked up to you, and then they
you're wrapped in spaghetti.
Yeah,
like you're having nightmares that you're. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
The other thing that strikes me about both of you, actually all 3 of us, to connect all 3 of us, is your creativity. And again, Jeff, Jeff, you express yours through your cartoons, through music. Chef, obviously, through food and writing. I'm a musician, or used to be, and I love art. And so maybe I'd like to hear from both of you to talk a little bit about how that creative gene, that creative juice that you have, has informed your life, has informed your profession, and how do other people view that creativity? I don't know. Answer that any way you like, but I'm fascinated by the process of creativity and how you both approach that.
I'll jump in, and kind of like what I was suggesting with you, Jeff. I didn't have a name for what I was. I was a ornery kid. I was a bad student. I was mischievous. I didn't know that I was creatively intelligent. And that's how those things manifested itself in an environment that did not have value for creative intelligence. And so I, just went for years just thinking I was not a good student, and didn't fit in. But it was years later till I began to realize, maybe I should pursue some of this stuff. And the first thing I did was I taught myself how to play the guitar. And then that led into other musical opportunities, but still not feeling like this has value. It's just, it just is. And it's,
because it didn't pay the bills.
Exactly. It didn't pay the bills. And I think that is something I said, no, I'm going to keep creating. And that's only been in the last 5 years. Because if it didn't pay the bills, then it's a waste of time, or it's just a hobby that's going to be expensive. And do you really want to do that?
Because that's the culture you grew up in.
Culture, yeah. Creative intelligence is not a value, and making money is. And so I, during COVID, because I grew up in the country, I lived in rural Oklahoma, about 15 miles away from school and equal distance from friends. And so, there's 3 stations you don't want to watch, and no games or anything. And so I began to rely on that creativity as a kid to create. And I used to grow a garden when I was a little kid. I built a skateboard ramp, a quarter pipe. I built 2 of them actually, because the first one wasn't any good. And then when COVID comes along, everybody's going, "Oh my God, what do we do?" And I'm like, I know exactly what to do. I know, just go to Home Depot and buy paint and start painting. And then I bought a Mac computer that I'm talking to you on, and I've got a little studio down here or a room. Now it's a studio. And in many of the nights during COVID, I would come down here and I would just open up GarageBand and I would start making music, not for any outcome other than it's COVID and I don't want to just watch TV and I want to create. It's the reason I quit playing golf. If I'm going to spend 4 hours doing something, I want something other than anger to show for it. And so if after a couple of sessions, I got a song to show, not anger, now so that's how it started for me.
That's awesome.
And what actually COVID did for me.
Jeff, your path to creativity.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I guess I hadn't really thought about this in quite this way before, but I grew up in a household that did celebrate creativity and being unique. My dad was really big on that and being different. And money, of course, was a big concern growing up as well. So I grew up with this idea that it was okay to do creative things, whether it was in art, music, whatever that was. However, it wasn't until much later on that I began to realize that we are all creative. Creativity is for everyone. And to your point, Kevin, it doesn't matter if the money part, that's kind of beside the point. Mm-hmm. We are all creative problem solving all the time. Like it sometimes, yes, it is in a traditional sense, making a painting, making a song, but in less obvious ways, a busy parent who is, let's say a single mom who has to get on her Zoom call for work and then pick up the kids, take them to soccer and run to a doctor's appointment. That requires creative problem solving. And we're doing it all the time. And one of my missions is to help others recognize that in themselves, because a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm not creative." And kind of like what you were, no, we're all creative. It may not come out in a traditional way. And though, if you do have that passion to learn to play an instrument or something, it brings me joy to help folks figure that out too. But, why not? Why one of my passions that doesn't pay any money, that is not connected to making a living, is learning French. And many years ago, about 6 years ago, I was taking a beginning 101 French class with Alliance Francaise Omaha, 101, the very beginning. And there was a woman in her mid 90s in this beginning French class, and she had a little magnifying glass and a flashlight. And I just thought, it's never too late. Yeah. So learn an instrument, do whatever, paint, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter your age.
I too have kind of a personal mission, and it's something I've honed in the last 5 years, but I describe my passion as I want to use my voice to help you hear yours. Mm-hmm. So in my writing, I didn't see it 20 years ago when I started writing, but I realized that was one of the things I was doing. I was putting my words down on paper, in print, on the computer, with the hopes that you will see that and maybe that will resonate with your story. But the idea is not for you to be dependent upon my words. Yeah. I describe my writing more like opening a window and let's let a little fresh air in so we can all breathe better together.
Love it.
Yeah. Man, we're blowing through this half hour, which is great. We'll do some extra. Chef, as we always do, what's cooking in the kitchen this week?
What's cooking? Well, we got asparagus season is upon us. And so I run the dickens out of asparagus. And if you're one of those people that have the gene, the stink gene, I call it, where you go to the bathroom and realize, oh, I've had asparagus. But at least it's not toxic or anything, or it's not allergic. It's just like, oh, wow, I've had asparagus. Asparagus is in. What else? Turnips are starting to come in. As anyone who's sat at my table knows that turnips are one of my favorite foods locally here. And greens, spinach, frisee. So those are things that are coming in right now.
Yeah. Okay. Before we get out of here, I did want to talk a little bit more about music. And Jeff, I've not heard the Prairie Cats, and I feel like a rookie that, as much as I love jazz and blues and music, that I've not heard your band, because you guys are a big stinking deal.
Well, I appreciate that. We're on hold at the moment. But yeah, thank you. We kind of, to my dad's credit, he was a big band drummer. He had played drums with Les Paul, Mary Ford, and others like that.
Wow.
And but he was a big believer in that genre of music, and I was rebelling against him by playing, Led Zeppelin and things like that. But eventually I came around and started this swing band, and it kind of alluding to what I said earlier, like I don't know how to read music, and I didn't know how to write songs in that genre. And so, but I literally went out and got gigs, and I didn't have a band. And then I realized, I'm going to have horn players. They need to read charts. I don't know anything about that. So I would write songs, and I would hum out the parts to someone who would chart them out for us. And I found a band, and I don't say this in a bragging way, but I say it. It's like, it's putting these intentions out into the universe. I told everybody in the band, they thought it was going to be like a one-off. I said, we're going to play New York. And we did. We played South by Southwest. We played the Derby in Hollywood, and we played right before 9/11, played Windows on the World, and did some touring. But we all had day jobs. I'm working at the World Herald. A lot of these guys are teachers. And we used to play in Lincoln quite a bit, actually, too. But, but totally different kind of thing for me. And frontman singing, as a shy guy. But when you put on that double-breasted suit and tie, and you've got a martini in your hand and a cool Cat Brian Setzer guitar, you become someone else. Man. And I still had hair then, so when I started, but anyway, yeah.
Well, so I got my start. I'm a drummer, and I haven't played for about a dozen years. But I got my start. My family, I grew up in and around Lincoln, but we moved to Ogallala about middle school age. So I started playing right after I had a license to drive my van and haul my drums around in a country swing.
Shag carpeting.
Oh yes. Mm-hmm. There's stories there. But I played in a country swing band in Eastern Colorado and Western Nebraska with older guys. And so I was barely I wasn't able to drink and play in these bars and stuff. And so, I played jazz all through high school and actually in junior high, and, in a small school, you can do everything. And so then by the time I get down here back to Lincoln and attend the university and study journalism, I played in a rock and roll cover band for years, and until about a dozen years ago, I guess I gave that up. But anyway, and again, Kevin, you have been a musician, and I don't think you've done a lot of stage work, but you've done a lot of writing and creating, and so anyway, I just love that synergy that we all have as musicians.
I will say this. It has been in the last year that I've made my music public. It took me 60 years to say, hey, okay. And it was a local DJ here in town that said, Chef, what are you doing with all this music? Like, just sitting on the hard drive. And he says, it's not going to bless anybody on the hard drive. And so he said, finish it up and put it out there. And so I probably now have about 40 or so songs on Spotify
Nice.
and Apple.
Congrats. That's great. I'll take a listen.
55 degrees is my moniker. Yeah.
What is it?
55 degrees. Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And remind our audience the significance of 55 degrees.
55 degrees is considered cellar temperature, and it is the environment you place good things into to make them better.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Can I just say real quick, I haven't yet seen Dirt, your film, but I hear great things about it.
Thank you. That's another late in life discovery is writing. So I'm not 90 learning French yet, but
there's still time.
In my 60s learning film.
My girlfriend, Christine Burright, who's a filmmaker, saw it and said that it's like a poem. So I can't wait to see it.
Good.
Yeah. Well, and you also had a cameo appearance in the Film Fest, the same one that Kevin was in. Bobby Hayden Church. Tell our audience a little bit about your cameo in that.
Yeah, it was my first. Well, it's a mockumentary, but it not to give anything away, but I think it's the first time that Alexander Payne has appeared in something filmed here. And there's a little Thomas Hayden Church for those who've seen Sideways and Wings. So it was a mockumentary. So my first little tiny itty bitty role, but it was kind of trippy because the whole point of a mockumentary, well, not the whole point, but you get to break that fourth wall. And so they have actually camera crew following around that you're supposed to occasionally make eye contact with. I was excited about that, except my scene was in a really small room. So the way they had to film it, it's all this behind the scenes stuff. It's kind of hard for me to even wrap my brain around it. But so instead, I didn't actually have a camera to look into, but they put a little piece of masking tape on the wall that when the actor walked through that I was talking to, and then I'm supposed to look over at the camera, I'm actually just looking at a piece of masking tape. It was kind of trippy. So not quite how it comes off, but it was a lot of fun. So.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, we're going to have you back because we haven't even got into my passion of journalism and your experiences for, decades at the Journal or at the World Herald. And so I admired your work then. I admire your work now. And it's just such a joy to get to know you.
Thanks. Can we talk about Negronis next time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then we'll have an array of gins that we will try to see which makes the better Negroni.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm in.
Chef, get us out of here. What's the word of the day?
All right. Well, I write a lot about anger, but worry showed me that I already have the basic skills to meditate.
Okay. All right. That's damn good. All right, gentlemen, thanks for hanging out with me on the Friday Afternoon Club. We will do this again. This isn't one and done.
Yeah. Bring Jeff back, man. Or maybe Jeff and I'll go get a Negroni or something.
I want to hang out with you. So
we'll make that happen. We'll make that happen.
Dan, do that. You're the connector of people.
Yeah, I will. I'll make that happen. Hey, thanks, Jeff and Chef, for helping us get the weekend started right. What a great conversation. Let's do it again real soon. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to leave a comment on our YouTube page. Thanks to the producer of the Friday Afternoon Club, Ike Samanis, Penology Tech Solutions for their technical help and equipment, Kim Remington, Parsons PR Director of Operations, and most importantly, thanks to each of you for tuning in. That's the show. Thanks for watching. Now go do good things. I'm Dan Parsons.